every weekend when we had nice weather, we just both wanted to be on the boat all the time. Like that's what we wanted to do. So we came up with a plan. Scott's got two boys. And so once they were out of high school, I should say, that's kind of was the trigger of, okay, we've got 6 years. We're going to set the next 6 years dedicated to planning how to do this, how to make it happen, saving money to financially make it happen. And that's how the 6 year plan came about. So then we lived full time, still working full time and lived on the boat. So that helped as well in the transition because by the time we quit our jobs, we were already fully moved on. We had already downsized all of our belongings. The whole change of quitting your job and sailing away was like, instead of doing it all at once. And I do kind of recommend that phased approach if you have the ability to do so. Now we're heading back down. We plan next month by December to be in the Bahamas again. And then our plan from there is to continue south and make our way through the Caribbean.
Welcome to the Winging It Travel podcast with me, James Hammond. Every Monday, I'll be joined by guests to talk about their travel stories, travel tips, backpacking advice, and so much more. Right now, I'm taking the podcast on the road travelling with me. So tune in every week for short form episodes detailing all my travels alongside my Monday guest episode. Are you a backpacker, gap year student, or simply someone who loves to travel? Then this is the podcast for you, designed to inspire you to travel. There'll be stories to tell, tips to share, and experiences to inspire. Welcome to the show. Hello and welcome to this week's episode where I'm joined by Jill Bockenstette, who lives full-time on a sailboat with her partner, Scott. Jill was also known by her brand Money for Mangoes. And today we're going to talk about travels, how to transition to that lifestyle, tips and tricks, and their 6-year financial plan in 2017 to go sailing full-time. I guess now 2023, they're doing it. So Jill, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thank you very much for having me.
So where in the world are you right now?
Right now, we're in Florida. So we are working our way south. We spent the summer in the Chesapeake and Solomons and Annapolis, and now we're heading back south for the winter.
Lovely. I think a lot of Americans sort of head south, don't they, for the winter, that we noticed on our road trip. If they're sort of in the northern states, they sort of just go south.
Yes, that is correct.
Don't blame them. So where did you grow up originally? And was there like any travel in your childhood?
Yeah, so originally I was born in Detroit, raised right outside of Detroit, Michigan. And growing up, we did lots of road trips with the family, primarily around car shows. My dad and mom are big into classic cars and the car shows. But the town that I grew up in, New Baltimore, Michigan, is right there on the water, on Anchor Bay, Lake St. Clair, between Michigan and Canada. So I've always had a love for the water as much as I could do with the family.
Was there one trip that maybe got some wanderlust in you as a youngster?
Once I was finished with high school, I was ready to move on to college, just explore different areas. And I went to Michigan State, have a degree in zoology from them. And when I graduated there, I moved to the Gulf Coast, Mississippi. So I've just had a love of the water and things like that since I can remember.
Okay. And did you travel internationally at all?
Yeah. So, well, if you count Canada International, that to me, that was just going to another city or state growing up so close to it. So that was cool. I've been to Canada many, many times. I think you're in Vancouver, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. So I started travel. I did do some international travels. When I was in college, I got to do a alternative spring break down to the Dominican Republic, which was really cool.
Oh.
And then later on, when one of my employers, I got to go to Toulouse, France, Hamburg, Germany, Montreal a couple of times. And we recently, Scott and I recently got back from Ireland for my brother's wedding a couple months ago.
Oh, wow. Nice. Ireland. Love that.
Yes. It was great.
I guess on the lake, you'd always be out on the lake, right? Is that where the sort of sailing water ideas come from, or was it later on?
Again, my parents were land lovers, so so I didn't get to be much on the water growing up, other than maybe when we would go to the beach. When I met my husband Scott, he was in the Coast Guard and had learned to sail in the Coast Guard. So when we started dating, getting together, he kind of introduced me to sailing, and it took off from there. So we started with a 13-foot sailboat and was like, oh, this is really fun. So then we graduated to a 26-foot sailboat that at the time we were living in Mobile, Alabama, which is where we left out of. We were there about the last 10 years or so. And so then we would do like day trips, sail on the Mobile Bay, do overnights in it. Um, and somewhere along the road, we came up with an idea to like just sell everything and do this full time. So we created a 6-year plan on that. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to come to that in a bit. I'm quite interested to see what you came
Yeah.
up with
Yeah.
for that. Yeah. It's interesting that you had your parents who are like land lovers and they do like classic cars and that sort of stuff,
Mm.
which if they analyze you now, they'll probably be a bit maybe surprised maybe that you sort of live this way because it's not obviously not what they would do. Is that fair?
It's definitely fair that it is not something they would do. But yeah, I think they think it's great that I'm out doing, things that I love and stuff like that. So they're very supportive of it.
Okay. And let's talk about the sailing bug. So you obviously with Scott, you sort of got that idea. At what point did it really start to come a bit serious? You know, like obviously you had discussions and maybe talked about it, but what year or what point in your life was it when, oh, actually, I guess this is where the 6-year plan comes in, but where was it like,
That's
oh,
right. Yeah.
we can maybe like even do this full time and, not do our traditional lives now? Like when did it start to fester?
I think we both realized that we just, every weekend when we had nice weather, we just both wanted to be on the boat all the time. Like that's what we want to do. So we came up with a plan. Scott's got 2 boys, and so once they were out of college or high school, I should say,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of was the trigger of okay, we've got 6 years, and that we're going to set the next 6 years dedicated to planning how to do this, how to make it happen, saving money to financially make it happen, and that's how the 6-year plan came about. Why the time frame was starting in 2023 anyway. So it gave us plenty of time to actually plan it out, find the right boat, which we got really lucky on, we think, and then just be able to save money. And so we curbed our spending for those 6 years, so that we were able to save up money and have money for the long haul.
Okay. And what were you doing before, well, up to that point? What were your jobs, you and Scott?
I worked as a training manager for Airbus, where they assemble the A320s and the A220s. Yep, they have an assembly plant in Mobile, so I was the training manager there. And Scott, after Coast Guard, when we left, he was an engineer, so civil engineering, primarily on dock structures, things like that.
And was it like traditional 9 to 5, Monday to Friday sort of job?
Yeah, traditional 7 to 5,
7 to
more
5,
like
yeah.
it. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, yes, we had the traditional jobs in that respect. Yes.
And do you think if sailing didn't come into it, let's say, I don't know, you just carry on as normal, do you think you still would have changed your life to do something else? Or do you think you're just fully on that path until sailing come along and then it changed? Like, or do you think you're always destined to maybe do a different type of lifestyle?
I would say between Scott and I, we would probably have found if it wasn't sailing, it would probably be the RV life or trawler life or something. Yeah. So just something different if we can afford to do so.
And why do you think that is?
I think we both realize that life is short
Mhm.
and we just really want to make sure to get the best out of it. There's other ways we can make money. There's if we run out of money on our plan, then we will stop and go back to work, but maybe it'll be
Sure.
something a bit less stressful and a bit more fun. So yeah, we're not opposed to possibly having to go back to work someday, but yeah, definitely just kind of go more with the flow, winging it as far as that goes. um,
Yeah, good plug.
see where this master plan takes us.
Okay, let's talk about the 6-year master plan and the financial plan. So this started in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're in 2023. So I'm
Yeah,
assuming it's either close to being
right.
implemented or it has been. So can you talk us through your idea of your 6-year plan and what were the rules and what did you put in place to make sure it happened?
So it was a 6-year plan because that was the time we decided to do this. And there wasn't any set like, oh, we're going to do this. And, there was no aha, like epiphany moment, but we decided, okay, yeah, looking at 2023, that's when we want to go. And so we backed it up and it was 6 years. And from there, we were both working our full-time jobs and we just decided to kind of really keep a close eye on our finances. And the biggest thing we did was just live well beneath our means. We drove cars until they died. The house we bought was just well below our means. We were easily able to afford the house. And just kind of keeping track of our finances. So we always had extra money to stash away and save up for later, which is now.
Okay. And was it tough to transition to this new plan because you're going to have to live more frugally and save more money?
Let's say I don't think we weren't really living out of our budget anyway. So it for us it wasn't that much of a transition. We probably started taking more modest vacations. Not that we were doing lavish things anyway, again. So for us, it was just really more documenting it and tracking it instead of making a big purchase, thinking about, okay, from those 6 years, it was like, is this purchase really going to help me when we move on to a boat? No, I'm not going to be able to use this in 3 to 4 years. So let's not buy it then. So a
Mhm.
lot of those things where you might want to, in fact, we had talked about redoing the landscaping of the house and then we scaled it way back and I don't know if we did much of anything, to be honest with you, that we didn't do ourselves, just as a way to save money. We made it nice enough to sell, but we didn't like invest a whole bunch of money in it because we knew it wasn't going to be our forever. Is a good example of like a way we didn't spend money.
Right. Okay. And at this point, did you have your sailboat that you're living in now?
We bought the sailboat we're in now. We bought in February of 2020, so right
Oh,
before the
wow.
pandemic.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
we closed on the sailboat. Yes, yes. So, but we had a place to keep her. We got really lucky. We have a Hunter 450 Passage, 1998, and we started looking for boats one day. We knew we wanted to own the boat well before we got to the end of our 6 year plan. We wanted to be able to know her inside and out. So when we take off, it wasn't brand new to us, and we knew how to maintain her and things of that nature. So it was a cold January morning and we were like, let's go look at boats. Let's go look at big boats. And so we looked at a few boats in Mobile and they were nice. We looked at some Beneteaus, some Hunters, just kind of what was for sale in the area. And we really liked the layout of the Hunter, but Scott is 6'3". And so he was kind of looking for a boat with more headroom where he could actually stand up in and not feel
Mm.
crumped down in. And so we found this Hunter 450 Passage, which is a center cockpit, meaning you have a lot more headroom in the aft cabin, in the salon. The cockpit's kind of raised up in the center of the boat. And so it was for sale an hour away in Pensacola. So we called up the owner and went and looked at it and just knew that was the boat for us. So we got really lucky. We know people that have spent a lot of time and money looking for their boats. So
No question. I don't really know if it's a fair or even a question to ask is what is the range to buy a boat in terms of dollars? Like how much have you got to spend, do you think, to get one that you can probably live on full time?
I mean, that's a tough question. It depends on the person's budget. I mean, you
Mm.
can sail and if you're buying a move-in ready boat, if you will, or if you're a rubber boat, it's all, how much time and how handy you are to work on it. So it can be any range, to be honest with you. I do post about our finances. The Money for Mangoes blog is more about kind of living on a budget and trying to keep within our budget. So we were fortunate and we bought this boat for $130,000, knowing we were going to sell the house and live like that was going to be our full-time home. So.
Okay. And when you're making this financial plan, did you know how much you're going to need to live on a sailboat? Or has that been a learning curve, do you think?
That has been a major learning curve of how much it actually takes to live on a sailboat. It's really funny because, of course, I'm watching YouTube videos and reading blogs and things of that nature about sailing, and you can do it from like $1,000 a month to $10,000 a month, and it's really just the best piece of advice I have for that is kind of look at what your expenses are now on land if you're thinking of doing this because they really don't change that much. You're eating out, your grocery bills, they pretty much stay the same. You do have a lot, you do need to budget a lot for the boat. Boats are expensive to maintain and keep up. But the rest of your living expenses are pretty much the same.
Okay. I've got some quick fire questions about
Sure.
living on a boat. So
Okay.
I'm going to jump forward a bit. How much does it cost for you to park your sailboat in, I guess, a harbour or somewhere to stay? Like, I don't know, let's say you want to stay somewhere for 3 months. Like, how does that admin work? Like, what do you have to do? How much does it cost? Like, I have no idea.
Okay, yeah, it very much depends on where you're located. So,
Hmm.
so we left January 2023. So we were in a slip in Mobile and we were paying around $350 a month, which is unheard of. The cost of living in Mobile is also much lower than other parts of the country. So if you're trying to find a place, say in the Florida Keys or Miami, it's going to be maybe $1,500, $2,000 a month.
Wow.
Um, just guessing.
Yeah.
So we were in the Chesapeake and we decided to stay put for a few months in the Chesapeake. We did just that. We found a marina to stay at for 3 months in Solomons. We stayed at Safe Harbor Anheuser's, and they price you by the length of your boat. So our
Oh.
boat is 45 feet
Hmm.
and ended up costing us around $850 a month to keep the boat at the marina. Now that includes all of their amenities, laundry, showers. They had free bike rentals, shuttles to the grocery stores or nearby shopping. So it includes, they have grills to cook out on and a pool to swim at. And so it was a really nice place.
Okay. And is that purely based on the individual harbour, or is it by state, do you think? Do different states have different rules with this sort of stuff?
It's individual harbor. They set their
Okay.
own prices, and you'll figure out like everyone kind of knows what the other marinas in the area are charging, so they're all similar based on, again, varying a little bit based on what they offer and such. But it
Okay.
changes more with the region, but not because of the state.
I guess got some questions down here, like basic things like cooking, showering, washing clothes, internet. That's all on your boat, I assume. But is there some of those things you had to put into your boat?
Some people do have a washing machine on their boat, washer and dryer. We do not, because it uses a lot of water and a lot of power. So you have to be very conscious of your water usage and your power usage. We do have 900 watts of solar panels, so that helps us. But on a day like today, we're like 3 days in a row now of cloudy weather, so we have to be very conscious of our power. And we do have an in-house generator that we'll turn on this evening to boost up our house battery bank. I think that might answer your question about the washing machine. Again, it's related to power and how much battery capacity you have on the boat. Cooking on the boat, we have a propane oven and stove, so cooking is really no different, other than it's much smaller than the house.
Yeah.
So if two people are trying to cook in there together, it gets a little bit crowded. And internet, we just this summer, one of our big projects we did was get Starlink put on the boat.
Ah, right.
So
Yeah.
so we can have, yeah, so we can have internet even when we're traveling offshore and things like that. So that's what I'm using right now. So
Yeah, that's key for like that I found for our RV people that we're driving around US states this
yeah,
summer. And a lot of people
yes,
have that because you can go anywhere sort of off grid and still have it in theory.
that's right. And luckily the sailboat is so slow that we can actually keep it on while we're moving.
Awesome. And then yeah, so on your boat, I guess you have like the classic. It's almost like RV in a little bit, isn't it? You have your shower and like your bathroom and stuff on there as well. You don't have to go elsewhere. You do it all on boat.
That's correct. Yep. We have a full standalone shower separate from the head bathroom area. So that's nice as well on this boat.
Right. Okay. And is there any other things in the boat that you've got now that you didn't think of before when you first got the boat that you had to add in?
Before we had left, so part of the 6-year plan and knowing we wanted to live more at anchor than in marinas, we did add the 900-watt solar panel to the boat.
Hmm.
We also converted our fridge and freezer. They were on 110 volt. We converted those DC power though, so that they run off the house battery.
Okay.
So prior to that conversion, we would have to run the generator probably twice a day for at least an hour just to keep the fridge and freezer cool. So now they just run off the house battery and we don't have to worry about it. So those were I would say those were the two big ones. We also, this summer, after being out for about 9 months, we did add a third AGM gel battery to our house battery bank. So we
Okay.
have about 600 ampere hours now. So we added a third battery, but it is very much like RV.
Yeah. So I can say another question like, do you have a car? Do you bring a car with you at all?
We do not,
Any bikes?
no bikes either. No, we walk
Okay.
a lot, a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about an address, house address? To get post sent to you
Okay.
or insurance and stuff like that. Like, how does that work?
So there's a wonderful service that we use in Florida, in Green Cove Springs, Florida, called St. Brendan's Isle, and they're tailored to RVers, cruisers, sailors, people that travel for work. So it's just a mail service. We can use their address. It gets sent to them, and then if we get mail, they'll scan it, the envelope to us. If we want them to open it, they'll open it and send us what the contents are. We can send packages to them, and then whenever we do get an address of a place we're going to be long enough to get mail, they can forward our packages to us at that point. So yeah, So we have become Florida residents.
Because my next question is going to be, because obviously the States is a bit complicated with insurances, healthcare, and stuff like that. Like, how do you plan for stuff like if you need to go to hospital, healthcare? Because obviously, if you live in one state, it's whatever the state offers, right? But how do you do it on a sailboat?
So that was a tricky one for us, something to consider. So in 2023, what we did, so my husband, he qualifies for VA benefits for healthcare as a veteran from serving in the Coast Guard. So his healthcare is through the VA. This year, what I did is it's not considered healthcare, but it meets the qualifications of having healthcare for tax purposes. It's a Christian cost sharing company. Is called MediShare. So it acts and looks and smells like insurance, but it's not really insurance. Next year in 2024, I'm going to switch to the Affordable Care Act.
Okay.
So the government-based healthcare for the US. That is correct. Now, we do plan to travel a lot more outside of the US, so I'm also going to be purchasing some traveler insurance for the major catastrophic hospital, things of that nature, and as well as evacuation insurance in case we need to get evacuated to the nearest hospital from wherever we are. So I'll have a couple additional insurances for 2024.
Okay, that's good. Maybe before we get to travel and where you've been and stuff, maybe some ups and downs of the of the journey so far this year.
Yes, there's definitely ups and downs. I've heard several people say that sailing is really high highs and really low lows. Right now, for example, we've been in St. Augustine. We got here last Wednesday, and we're kind of stuck here due to the weather. We are getting nearly 30 knot winds right now. Just not really great weather to be traveling in. We were trying to go offshore. From St. Augustine down to, I think our next stop was going to Port Canaveral. The waves out there right now are like 6 to 8 foot seas. So not going to happen. We have to change our plans. So we're really just kind of sitting here trying to figure out, my husband's the planner, just trying to figure out where we're going to stop each night, what anchorage we're going to go to, how far we're going to go each day. We have a 63-foot mast, so we have to worry about the height of the bridges and things like that. So you definitely have lows and, have to overcome that. But then you also appreciate the highs. Before we were in St. Augustine, we were in Fernandina Beach, which is right along the coast of Florida and Georgia. And it was a great stopping point. We went offshore from Charleston to there. And then before we came here, and the weather was beautiful. It was calm. And we were just amazed at like how calm and beautiful and how easy it was those few days in Fernandina. So we definitely were appreciating the highs at that time.
Okay, and when you say you go offshore, what do you mean by that?
I mean, we will go out into the Atlantic Ocean for as far as where we are now, traveling south along the east coast of the US. To say go offshore is really like we're just going out and we're sailing along the coast, but offshore in the ocean, instead of traveling along the intracoastal waterway, which is more inshore with lots of bridges to go through and things like that.
Got it. And do you always stay within,
If that makes sense.
like, the USA? Like, as in, like, do you ever reach out, unless you're going to international travel, but like if you're traveling down the coast, do you ever go outside of I don't know where the line would be in the coast of the USA into international waters? Is there a danger of that?
I mean, it all depends on where we're leaving from and where we're headed to. I would say we've gone as far as about 20 miles offshore, just, kind of doing a direct line to the next place we're going. Yeah. And then, of course, we've also gone over to the Bahamas. So we've been much further offshore than that when we went over there to the Bahamas and such.
Okay. A couple more questions about just a sailboat. I've got here, what would people need to consider for transition? Bit of a broad question, I suppose. But if you're just a land-based living in an apartment like I do, for example, and then you're going to a sailboat, it seems to me like a huge change. But what are one or two things that you just have to consider and bear in mind, because it's going to be such a big difference?
Yeah. It is living in a small space, most definitely. Yeah. So I can speak to the way we did it. We bought the boat early enough where we would spend all our weekends on the boat. So Thursday night, we'd pack up our bags from the house, which was only 10 minutes away. Go down to the boat. We'd go to work Friday, come back right to the boat, and spend all day Saturday, all day Sunday on the boat before kind of going back to the house, going to and from work during the week from the house. So that kind of got us used to, at least on a shorter, 3-night time span, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, we were getting used to like, oh, this is what it's kind of like living on a boat. Now, granted, it was still in a marina. We still had a car at the time, but we slowly transitioned. And then it was a year and a half before we left the docks in January that we sold our house. So then we lived full time and, still working full time and lived on the boat. So that helped as well in the transition because by the time we quit our jobs, we were already fully moved on. We had already downsized all of our belongings except for the cars. And then it was just sailing away. The whole change of quitting your job and sailing away was like, instead of doing it all at once. And I do kind of recommend that phased approach if you have the ability to do so.
Did you sell your cars?
We did.
Yeah.
We sold them.
So you pretty much
sold the house and
everything.
The cars.
Yeah.
We did. Yeah.
I think you'd have to, wouldn't you? Unless you want to keep your house, but or
yeah,
rent it out. I'm not sure.
I mean, outside of like having some family in that area, we'd have no attachments. Like anything that we own, we don't have anything on land that we own. Outside of maybe a storage box or two at our parents' house.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah.
Let's go to the travel portion of your lifestyle, as per the podcast name, Winging It. So do you feel like you're winging it every day, or is there a plan of maybe like next 6 months or whatever? Do you know where you're going to be, or is it purely week to week?
I would say we have a general idea of where we want to go for the next hurricane season. That life revolves around the weather a lot. So I would say between now and I'd say for the next year, we have an idea, but we also have backup plans in case.
This is a patron shout out to Laura from the Swamp Soup Stickers, who has contributed £5 to the podcast on my Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. Really appreciate it, and it helps the podcast to keep going in the future. If you're interested, head to the show notes where you'll find a link to my Patreon. The website address is patreon.com/Winging It Travel Podcast. For £5 English, you will receive some trendy stickers from myself in the post, a shout out on each episode, and also my digital travel planner by email. Thank you for your support.
Something happens, a plan B, a plan C. So, but yeah, it is, you want to plan as much as you can, but then you also have to be able to be flexible with your plans because they can change based on the weather and other things.
So for international travel, so you're limited, but obviously you could sail across the Atlantic if you wanted to, right? I guess, in theory. But
yeah.
Let's talk about some countries that you traveled to whilst being on your sailboat. Like, where have you gone to? Maybe give me 3 countries that you traveled to that were pretty cool.
So we just left in January. We sailed down the Gulf Coast, so through the Gulf of Mexico, around Florida, and then we went to the Bahamas. So that's the only country so far that we've been to is the Bahamas, because then we came back to the U.S. to ride out hurricane season up in the Chesapeake area, so Maryland, Virginia, things like that. But now we're heading back down. We plan next month by December to be in the Bahamas again.
Yeah.
And then our plan from there is to continue south and make our way through the Caribbean. So then we'll have several other countries that we'll be able to visit.
First question: how does it work with a passport? Because I'm going from a traditional travel point of view. You land in an airport, you give your passport, they stamp you in. How does it work sailing to different, like Caribbean, there's loads of countries. How does that work?
Okay, so each country, for the Bahamas, for example, you still have to have your passport and you still have to go through customs and immigration. So you enter into the country at the nearest port of entry where they have customs and immigration. The way the Bahamas work, I have to stay on the boat. We also are traveling with a dog, by the way, so that adds a level of complexity to it.
Yeah.
Mango, the dog, and I stay on the boat, and Scott goes off to the customs and immigration with my passport and his passport, and they sign us in. So for Bahamas, at least, they have a online system called Click to Clear. You fill all of that information out ahead of time, upload your documents that they request, maybe your vessel documentation, vaccine records for the dog, things like that. So when you go to clear and they've already have it, they can just pull it up, look at it, stamp your passport, and then you're clear to travel throughout the country. So it's very similar. You just have to go to them instead of most of the time.
The visa would be like the normal visa, right? Like a tourist visa, I guess. Is that what you'd get?
Yes, if we needed a visa, we would get a tourist
Yeah, if
visa.
you needed a visa, yeah. Okay. So it's kind of the same as
Yeah,
normal travel, but the only difference is you're arriving by sea, not by air, essentially.
correct.
And legally, not legally. Yeah.
And same with clearing back. When we come back to the US, there's an app that the Customs and Border Protection has. So you just check in with through the app and say, hey, we're arriving back into the US. And sometimes sometimes they'll want to visit you, but most of the time they just say, okay, thank you for letting us know. And then we're clear to be back in the country.
Wow. Okay. And what about some of the countries that you're hoping to go to in the Caribbean? What's on your list?
Okay. So we plan to visit the Bahamas again because we really enjoyed that. And then we'll travel south. We will plan to go to Dominican Republic, from Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and then over to the U.S. Virgin Islands. And then from there, we would like to just sail down the Caribbean coast, to the various different countries. There's French countries, the Dutch countries,
Hmm.
so on and so forth. And then if things go well and if everything works out the way we would like, then we would like to spend the next hurricane season in Grenada.
Oh, I've been
So we
there.
would just kind of be anchored
Nice.
off off of. You have been to Grenada?
Yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah.
Did you like it?
Oh, I loved it. Yeah. It's very, how can I put this? Not, I won't say raw, but compared to the rest of the Caribbean countries, it's not very touristy, that I
Oh,
found.
cool. Good, good.
And there was a nice little harbour into the capital. I can't remember the capital now. Is it St. George or St. James? I can't remember. Yeah, that harbour is really nice. We had I think on the last night, a really nice dinner, like looking out to that harbour, like where the main capital is. And
Oh, wonderful.
our Airbnb host was quite interesting. He's an American guy. Yeah, very interesting guy. But his, yeah, no more on that. But I think his villa was on top of a hill, so we had a good view over the island.
Wonderful.
People are lovely, and they're said to be one of the nicest in the Caribbean area. Like very very chill, and yeah, love my
Awesome.
time there.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping to do. So, of course, we'll come up with other plans if we don't make it that far. But
Okay, that
that's our
sounds
current idea.
great plan. Great plan. Love that. God, a little bit jealous as well. I was like, oh, that sounds nice. Well, let's talk about US travel then. So obviously, international's coming. So in the US, where have you traveled to on your sailboat? And that's been some of your favorite places.
Okay. So we started out of Mobile, Alabama, went to Pensacola, and then from Pensacola offshore, probably our worst offshore, going on the outside, not going through the ICW, night we had was a rough, rocky night. So, and we made it to Pensacola, to Panama City. Um, Stayed there for a few days, and then came out and did a 2-night overnight sail down to Tampa Bay area, which was nice. And then we did a little bit of the intercoastal waterway on the Gulf side. One of the towns we just really loved on the Gulf side was Venice. I don't know if you've heard of Venice, Florida, but
Yeah.
but it was a really cool town. We had a great time in Venice, and then sailed down to Charlotte Harbor near Boca Grande, and then from there we did an offshore sail to Key West. So
US.
Scott was stationed in the Coast Guard twice in Key West, so that's kind of
Hmm.
like a little bit like going back home for him. But I really did enjoy going to Key West by boat. So we stayed in a mooring field down there, and could just go to town whenever we wanted. And then we could also get away from it all whenever we wanted and just stay on our boat as well. So it was a lot of fun down in Key West. Just day to day, I hopped up the outside of the Florida Keys and got up to Key Biscayne.
Dreamy.
Didn't do much in those islands by boat. We've been there, visited them by land, and that was really fun. But yeah, so I'd say Florida Keys were a lot of fun, Key West in particular. And then we shot over from Key Biscayne, we shot over to the Bahamas. And when we came back from the Bahamas, we shot straight up to Cape Canaveral. So we
Yeah.
missed Florida. And then we went from Cape Canaveral, worked our way up to the Chesapeake, May and June of this year.
I was going to say that the Florida Keys for me, unfortunately, we didn't get there this year because it's too far south from where we were going driving wise. But that little stretch of road goes like across those islands down the bottom. Oh,
Mhm.
I'm just so intrigued by it. I just want to see what it's like. I've got images in my mind, Google images. I just want to
Yeah,
experience
oh,
it.
it's beautiful.
Mm.
Definitely get down there and visit. It is a beautiful place.
Okay. And if you want to go and visit, this is might be a basic question. If you want to go and visit the West Coast, how would you
Okay.
sail? How would you sail across there? What would be your route?
the route would most likely be the Panama Canal
It's
to
Panama
get
Canal.
over.
It's literally that.
Yeah,
Bloody hell, that's quite
yeah,
far, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
We would have to get over there from, could probably get over there from the Grenada, kind of sail up that way. We do have some friends of ours that we were boat dock that were on the same boat dock with us in Mobile that they are currently living in Roatan. So it would be actually fun to kind of get over to those neck of the woods before
Hmm.
we're heading over to through the Panama Canal and go visit with them on their sailboat. So they live on their boat.
It proves how big US is, though, doesn't it? Because you can't just go across to the other
Big.
side. You got to go all the way down through the thinnest point and then all the way back up to go and see your own country. You can't actually sail, and of course through Canada, not possible. You can't sail across. It's a bit of a nightmare.
Right, right. That is true. Yeah.
Okay, what's been maybe some of your favorite places to start to live for a bit on your sailboat? I know we talk about visiting, but like, has there been any docks that were just like, oh, that's a great little place to stay for a longer period of time that you thought?
So this summer we were in the Chesapeake and we knew we wanted to just kind of settle in somewhere for a little while and do some boat projects. One of the projects we did was the Starlink and then adding the third battery. And so we just knew we had a lot of just wanted to sit still and do some work on the boat this summer. And we had heard Deltaville, there's a lot of sailboats in Deltaville, Virginia. Um, but as we were sailing north through the Chesapeake, we came across a town called Solomons, Maryland, which is about by car, I'd say it's about an hour south of Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
I think by car. So I could be wrong on my geography on that. But but anyway, we found that marina, a marina to stay at in Solomons for 3 months, and we absolutely just loved it. It's a small town. Everyone was just very friendly. The marina is right near this small neighborhood, and walking the dog 2, 3 times a day, I feel like we just got to know people living in the area. You know, it was just a really great community there. So we would definitely go back to Solomon's if and whenever we make it back to the Chesapeake. It was a really cool place to visit, to live, I guess, months.
Yeah, like just I guess you don't have to live anywhere, but you must come across places that are like, oh, like staying here would be quite nice for like a few more weeks. Like
Mhm.
I guess that's one of the advantages of being on a sailboat. You can just decide to go next day or stay.
Weather dependent, you can. Yeah.
Ah, weather dependent,
If
of course.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, weather dependent. It's a new concept,
Yeah.
isn't it? It's a new way of thinking, weather dependent.
Yes, your life revolves around the weather for sure.
I guess you've got to maximize the calm conditions, haven't you, to either stay or go, right? If you need to go, you've got to go in case it's bad for the next few
Yeah, there are
weeks.
times where, yeah, there's times where you absolutely love where you are, but you're like, I gotta go now, or else I'm not going to get out of here for a week and a half, or things of that nature. So, yeah, that
Okay.
happens quite a bit.
How has your dog changed to the lifestyle? How's he or she adapted?
I keep looking over here because he's just laying on the couch next to me sleeping. He has done just fine. Luckily, yeah, I think is just happy to be around us, and we're home more now with
Yeah.
him, not being full-time jobs. I think he's adapted just fine. He's getting a lot of walks every day. I would say that the challenging part with the dog is we cannot get him to use the bathroom on the boat
Oh,
at all. So there's some cruisers and sailors, they'll have a grass pad and they'll put it up at the bow of the boat and the dog will go to the bathroom up there and then they can just rinse it off. I have tried and tried and I cannot get him to use a grass pad to a potty training pad, like nothing. So it kind of limits how far we can travel at a time. He's done up to 48 hours without using the bathroom. We try not to do that with him.
yeah,
But we've done several 24-hour stints. The other challenge is when you're cruising somewhere, mainly in the US, that we found was not a challenge in the Bahamas, is finding an anchorage where you can get shore access. So if we are traveling down the ICW and we want to anchor for the night before we continue on the next day, we need to find a place to take them to shore. So not all anchorages have access to land. So that part becomes a challenge as well. So
can you explain what that means? Where you don't have access to land? Do you mean like a little pier or like a bit of land that juts out so you can just jump across and walk to the land, that sort of thing?
no, so on our boat we have a dinghy, which is a smaller boat.
Okay.
that with like a 6 horsepower engine on it. Okay. So we'll deploy the dinghy, drop that in the water, put the engine on it, and you can take the dinghy to what you look for is like a small sandy beachy area if you're kind of traveling through some more remote areas, but not oftentimes you can find it. It might just be marsh grass and there's nowhere for the dog to
Uh-huh.
go to the bathroom in the marsh grass, for example.
Yeah.
So then you're trying to look for maybe a boat ramp or somewhere that you can actually like land the dinghy and get them onto dry land. Marinas, if you can find a marina, sometimes they'll let you bring your dinghy up there. Sometimes they do it for free, sometimes for a fee. And you can, or a pier, a public pier, something like that, where you can bring the dog to and tie the dinghy off to, and then get them out for a walk.
Hey, yeah, just a quick one. I just want to say there are many ways to support this podcast. You can buy me a coffee and help support the podcast with $5, or you can go to my merch store with the affiliate link with TeePublic, where there's plenty of merch available to buy, such as t-shirts, jumpers, hoodies, and also some children's clothing. Thirdly, which is free, you can also rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, or Good Pods. Also, you can find me on social media on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. Simply just search for Winging It Travel Podcast, and you'll find me displaying all my social media content for traveling, podcast, and other stuff. Thank you. I don't even think that'd be a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, there's places where there's not, some of the anchorages are either so remote that it's just there's no shoreline available to walk them, or you might be anchored in this nice residential area, but everyone has, it's all their backyard, so obviously you're not going to trespass on their property to get to land. So so yeah, you just have to find the right spots where you can actually get the dog to shore.
Okay, got it. This question is not actually listed on my notes, but I assume there's like a community of people that you must bump into or keep in contact with as you sail across different parts of the East Coast, right?
Definitely, yes. So there's lots of cruisers in doing the same thing we are, and it's a small world actually. You start running into them at
Yeah.
different places. And then some of them you just, we became, when we went to the Bahamas, we were traveling by ourselves at the time, and we landed on the island of Bimini, and we met this other cruising couple there that had come down from New York, I believe. And so they sailed across. We ended up at the same marina when we crossed over to check into customs and things of that nature. So we kind of had the same sailing plan. We wanted to go check out the same islands, and looking at the weather, we had the same ideas of, yep, this is the day I'm going to go. Yep, this is the day I agree. This is the day we're going to go too. And so we ended up sailing around with them. We call them a buddy boat. So they were our buddy boat for, I would say, a good six weeks cruising through the Bahamas. And so we've just become really good friends with them. They are on their way down south now, but they're a couple weeks behind us. Just, they had their own schedule of things to do with their family. So we got an earlier start than they did. And so we're keeping in touch with them throughout, just checking in on them, seeing where they are and how they're doing. And hopefully we'll get to see them back at least in the Bahamas when we get back over there, because I know that's where they're headed to. So yeah, definitely you keep in touch with people we've met in Solomon's when we were at the dock for 3 months. Some really great people there too. So
Okay. Can you talk us through like the Bahamas? Like where did you go there and what did you see?
So when we went in the spring, we went over to Bimini. We checked in through Bimini, and then we sailed across the northern Berry Islands, and we stayed there about a week again because of weather. So we kind of bounced around to different anchorages that would protect us from the wind direction that was coming for those days. And then from there, we went to northern Eleuthera, Spanish Wells, had a wonderful time there, stayed at a few different anchorages there, met super wonderful, cool cruisers there. And then when we left northern Eleuthera, we went into the Abacos Island chain. So then we sailed from south to north up the Abacos chain and then popped back over to the US. So that was about a full 2 months of cruising in the Bahamas.
And is that as idyllic as what people think?
So no. So it has, again, it goes back to it has its ups and downs. Some days were just amazing, beautiful. And some days were not. We did have some friends from Utah come to visit us. And unfortunately for them, we had 35 not winds the entire week they were there, and we were stuck at a marina the whole week, and didn't get to go island hopping with them very much. So yeah, it's really hard to plan visits because you just don't know what kind of weather you're going to get when they get here, as they learned the hard way. Um, but it does have its moments where it's like what people imagine it would be. It has
Yeah.
those moments, but it's definitely not all the time. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's on my list. It's so close, really close, as in like it's a 3 or 4 hour flight, right, from anywhere in North America, unless you're in South, but it's somewhere that's got to go
There you
and
go.
check out. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely.
You are technically retired, would you say?
You could say that. Yes, we did quit our jobs and are not working. So,
Okay. And what's part of your plans to make sure get some income for the year? Thinking about that.
so again, part of our 6-year plan was to try to live off the money that we've been saving all
Yeah.
up until we quit our jobs in 2023. Um, and then should we need additional income, I would say one thing I'm trying to do is build up Money for Mangoes, which is the blog that I
Yeah.
have going on for the travel. So I would like to monetize that at some point. I just started it in January, so I think it's a little too soon yet. Um, and worst case scenario, if we have to, we can just park the boat somewhere, in the wintertime in the Keys or, US Virgin Islands and pick up a job if we need, somewhere there. So,
Mm.
we sort of have backup plans, hoping we don't need to use them, but we do have a couple ideas in play of, if we need to. My husband, Scott, is also a licensed captain. So he's got his 100-ton captain's license. So if he needs to, he can deliver boats, things like that. So we've got some options available if we do need to pick up some additional income.
Yeah, I guess in my mind, I think if you save like a lot of money in a short period of time, like 5, 6 years, you probably want some sort of like as big as a high interest account you can get to get the most interest off your savings, right? At least you have some income from that, I'd
Right.
imagine.
That's right.
But
That's right. Yep. Definitely including income from the accounts we have. Yeah.
yeah, I'm not sure if it's enough. It depends how much you've got, obviously, per person, but it would help, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Definitely helps. Yeah, for sure.
I think monetizing is the biggest question, even for me with the podcast and stuff like that. Is the question of like, well, if I was to go on my own, how, obviously you had your plan, which is great. And I think we would have a plan as well, but like, how would you after that make sure you have some sort of income to keep going, or at least to start off with anyway? It's quite a big question, quite a hard question to answer.
Very hard to answer.
Constantly thinking about it every day of the week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, let's, as you mentioned, let's talk Money for Mangoes. Love the name. So this is your blog that you and your website that you have, the brand that you go
Yes.
by. Tell us what you do on Money for Mangoes.
Really, I started out just to document our travels. And I know a lot of the questions online, including the ones I was asking Google, was how to make this work financially. So, and how much does it really cost to sail? That's a big question. So I wanted to just kind of document along as with our travels of where we're going and what we're doing, kind of what our costs are. So one of the popular posts I have is when we were in when we were in the Bahamas in the spring. Every time I went to the grocery store, I made an itemized spreadsheet of what I bought and how much it cost and where I bought it from. And so I share that spreadsheet in one of the articles on Money for Mangoes. And because in a lot of the Facebook groups I'm on, people are, it comes up over and over again, like, what does it cost? Like, how much is it going to cost for food? I hear it's so expensive over there. And so I feel like that is hopefully helpful to others because I'm trying to be helpful to others, and sharing our costs. We after 6 months of cruising, we kind of looked at our finances to see where we are, to see if we, based on what we think our monthly budget should be and how are we doing. And so I actually shared our costs with others so they can get an idea that, we're not living off $200 a month. It costs a little bit more than that too, for us anyway, to sail around. So, yeah. So I'm just trying to document all of that in Money for Mangoes. Just try to put out helpful content for others who are doing what we're doing, maybe just starting out or, just thinking of doing what we're doing and just trying to get ideas of what it's like out here. So
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's what people want to know. Probably there's 2 or 3 things, right? that people always ask me to ask guests. And one
Mhm.
of those is, how do people, how much they spend on their trip and how do they finance it? They're probably two of the biggest questions. And I think what we used for our trip this year was good, because we left in January as well, our job.
Perfect.
But we'll get to go back to a job though, because we ran out of money. But we used Travel Spend was the app that we used, which is an app that you can put
Okay.
any expense in, and you can categorize anything you want, and it breaks it down by day, how much your average cost is by day, by month, and you can break it down into like different categories. That's been quite cool for us to see where most of the money's going, and a little bit shocking when you look
Yeah.
at it. But yeah, that's quite a cool thing to people to use as well for their travels.
Yes, I would say our biggest shock of like where more money is going than what we budgeted for would be marinas, for sure.
Okay,
So
right.
yes, we're working on that, trying to stay in marinas less. You know, see how it goes, see if we can adjust it.
Yeah, adapt. Okay, and how many blogs do you write a month, or how often do you release?
I try to write one a week, so I try to publish one every Friday.
Okay,
Yeah, so I've been consistent with that since mid-May when we got back from the Bahamas, and I wrote several articles about being over there in the Bahamas and such.
okay. And how's that going, do you think, blogging for the year? Because that's actually one of my aims for next year. I've got a year's worth of travels to write about, so I'm going to do some blogging. But how have you found the journey on that?
I really like it. It's really interesting. It challenges me, trying to come up with helpful content. And it's just I enjoy it. There's blogging communities I'm in, Facebook groups and things like that. So that part's fun as well. And I just, it's a pretty fun project to work on, to be able to write about what you're doing and look back at them, referring to old blogs for newer ones and such. And it's like really cool. Like, look, you just kind of get to look at your pictures again. And I try to use all my like original pictures as much as I
Mm,
can, obviously for the travels that we do and stuff. So yeah, I think it's going pretty well so far. It's still new. You know, I say I started it in January, but I really worked on it seriously since middle of May. So
got it. Yeah.
just trying to it's interesting, yeah, trying to pick up steam and things like that. So yeah.
Okay. And where can people find your website and obviously sign up to your blog, and if you have a newsletter and stuff, where can people find you?
You can find me at moneyformangoes.com. And then I also have Facebook and Instagram. On Facebook, I have Money for Mangoes and on Instagram, but I also do a lot of posting on SB Pelagia, Pelagia, which is the name of our sailboat.
Okay.
So Money for Mangoes or SB Pelagia on Facebook and Instagram. And then, of course, moneyformangoes.com. If you want to find me online, and have a newsletter that goes out every week as well. So
Cool. I'll put them in the show notes, the links to those, so people can just quickly click that and sign up. That's great.
wonderful. Thank you.
It's such a unique topic. It's a cool one to write about. Yeah, because to give you an example, I literally know nothing about it. I'm going in blind. Apart from the interview I had with my friend Merrill, who lives on a sailboat as well.
Okay. Yeah.
He's living at Boston, I think. He was anyway. I don't know where he is now. He runs a podcast about it, which is quite interesting.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a whole brand new concept, a bit like RVing, but I think RVing is more well known. But sailboating is probably a bit more under the radar, like living full time.
Yeah. You learn what a small world it is when you keep running into the same people too.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's cool.
but it's a really great community. Everyone's helping each other out. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Okay, we're gonna finish the episode with some quick fire travel questions. So
Okay.
these are some of your favorite things that you've seen worldwide. So I'm gonna start with.
Okay.
It's travel question time. Top 3 favorite countries internationally that you traveled to.
Bahamas. Ireland was very cool. Just had a really wonderful trip there. And I had always wanted to travel to France. And so I did get to go to France, and that was really neat as well. So I am studying French very slowly on
Oh,
Duolingo.
okay.
So it's really kind
Tough.
of fun. It's fun to go to a French speaking country. So I would say those are my top 3. I have to add England in there, which is where my brother and sister-in-law live too. So
Oh, okay. Where do they live in England?
they live in London.
Okay, London. Cool. Tough. Okay. Next question is 3 countries that you've not traveled to that you'd love to go to next.
Okay. So ever since studying French in high school, I have always wanted to go to the island of Martinique, which is in the Caribbean.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm very, very much looking forward to stopping in Martinique. That is one island, one place I'm looking forward to. I'll be honest, I'm really focused on the Caribbean right now because
Yeah,
that's
yeah, fair.
where, we're spending all of our time thinking about. But that one would be wonderful to go to, as well as Grenada, because I know, well, we hope to be spending several months in Grenada. So I do look forward to that as well. It looks really cool. Like you said, less touristy and more just kind of living on an island.
Yeah.
A third place I would like to go that I haven't been, I think it would be really cool to go to both Iceland and Greenland up there and
Oh,
see, or anywhere up in the northern and see the northern lights. So Finland
yeah.
there, I think would just be really, really cool to go visit some more than three, but
Yeah, yeah, but Greenland's another country. Well, country, it's not a country, but like part of Denmark. But it's another
yeah,
place that people just don't really talk about that much. Hard
yeah,
to get to and not many places to go,
exactly.
but it looks great. Okay.
Yeah.
And what about three favorite US states?
Three favorite US states. Well, I'm partial to Michigan. That's where I was born and raised. My husband's in the back there. Oh, because he was born and raised in Ohio. So
Okay.
we have a little bit of college football rivalry going on. So favorite states would be Michigan, Florida. I've always loved Florida.
Yeah.
I mean, I did enjoy living in Alabama, so
Oh,
I'll throw Alabama a bone in there. And that's where I was living the last like 10 years before we left. So
okay.
I'm just kind of throwing out the states I know that I've been to that I enjoyed. If I spent that much time there, it must not be that bad. So
Yeah, of course. Okay. And what about if you could live in another country for 1 year that you've not lived in before? So where are you going to live?
okay, it would be in the Caribbean somewhere, one of the islands. I would love to live on an island. So Martinique sounds wonderful. Grenada sounds wonderful. Haven't been there yet, but
St. Martin? Yeah, some of those are well nice. Okay.
yeah, St. Martin, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What about three favorite international cuisines or foods?
Okay. International. Conch fritters from the Bahamas. They they're everywhere. They have conch and they're so wonderful. Let's see. Oh, crepes from France.
Oh yeah.
Love crepes.
Yeah.
And then schnitzel from Germany.
Oh, of course. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
I did love that. I'd say those are my favorites.
If you could pick one marina that you've been to sit
Okay.
there with a cup of coffee and just watch the world go by for an afternoon, where are you going to sit?
A marina or Anchorage? Can we add Anchorages in there?
Yeah,
Or,
if I'm honest, I don't know the big difference between the two. So yeah, that's fine.
okay. I would probably sit at Meek's Patch in northern Eleuthera. The water was completely crystal clear. You could see all the way to the bottom, the grass blades at the bottom of it, white sandy Anchorage. It was beautiful. So
Okay,
I would
that's awesome.
enjoy that Anchorage again.
Yeah. Okay. What about one bit of advice that you would just have all the things you've learned that you give to someone if they're looking to live on a sailboat?
I mean, one is tough to say. I would say that it's definitely not just all the highs, that there are definitely lows with it. And just go in with your eyes wide open that you are going to have challenges, but you will get through those challenges. And the highs, the good days are much worth the harder days. And if you go into it with a realistic point of view of what you're going into, I think you will do just fine and do well.
Okay. A couple more questions. What about one thing you don't miss from living
Okay.
on land?
One thing I do not miss,
Yeah.
I don't miss working. Uh, I don't miss working, and I don't miss getting up early every 5 days a week. And I can't complain about traffic. I really didn't have much traffic, but I don't miss being in traffic, on land.
Yeah, it's the worst, right? Yeah. Okay, interesting. Okay, the last question is going to be this is more generic. So obviously you travel about quite a bit,
Okay.
so I think it still applies. If you were to give a few reasons as to why someone should go and travel, so that could be any travel, could be different state, internationally, on a sailboat. Like, why should they
Okay.
go, and what words of wisdom would you pass on?
I think they should go to see the world, to see what else is out there than from maybe the town that you grew up in. Learn different cultures. I think learning the different cultures of different nationalities of people in just different areas and how people live in different ways, I think is just fascinating to me, and you learn a little bit more about how the world goes around. So that would be kind of why I would recommend people go out and travel.
So Jill, thanks for coming to the podcast. It's been a great chat. Again, also learned some more things about sailing. So I'm building my knowledge with that sort of living and lifestyle. It's quite cool. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to my Winging It Travel podcast episode today. You can find me on Instagram at James Hammond Travel or Winging It Travel Podcast. You can search for both. I release weekly clips of this podcast episode, as well as photos from the last 8 to 10 years of my travels. You can also follow me on TikTok, Facebook and Pinterest by searching Winging It Travel Podcast. I do release daily content to do with travel and the podcast throughout the week. Also check out my website, jameshammond.org. There's content about myself, my travels, and there's also a newsletter sign up as well as a contact form. Finally, please rate and review the podcast on Podchaser. This is my platform of choice. Alternatively, you can rate this on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts from. This really helps the podcast gain a bit of traction for the future in terms of guests and content. And I'm glad to see that you guys are listening out there, reviewing it and enjoying the content so far. Stay safe, stay humble, keep listening, keep traveling, and I'll catch you soon. Cheers, James.